Just hit that button. Aha. Okay, so now we're recording. So,
Yeah.
Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm muting myself, and you can start your bee school. Thank you.
All right. Oh, you got me disabled for screen sharing, and you're muted.
Can you share yet? Did I hit the right button?
It keeps saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
All right, advanced. Oh, all participants. Okay, now
There,
try.
it's going.
All right, I'm back to mute.
Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Okay, y'all got
Yep.
it? All right.
We can see it.
So basically, this is the way this format's going to follow is that document that I pasted in the chat is the main document that we'll use. There's a couple little supplementary things for different topics, and then if any other speakers have supplementary additional information they want to add, I plan on most of those are only 1 or 2 pages, so I'll have printed copies that are in-person meetings. And then we'll have a different topic each month, and it follows kind of along the main document guide. So January is the colony. Oh, and the idea for this is to read the information before you come to the meeting. That way you have a basic understanding of it, and then I can go through a little more detail, or whoever the speaker is. And then if you have questions, you can get your questions ahead of time. That way you don't forget them during the actual presentation. If I can get this thing out of my way so I can find the next, there it is. So the first subject is the colony and its organization. I'm going to skip through a lot of this because this is pretty simple stuff. If you have any questions at the end, just ask me. So, there's a queen, a drone, and workers. The workers are female. The queen's the head of the colony, the reproductive part of the colony, and the drones are the male. Their sole purpose in life is to mate with the queen. It talks about laying workers. So, all the female bees in a colony have the ability to lay eggs. Only the queen ever gets mated. Normally, the pheromones that the queen produces and that the brood produces suppresses the workers from laying eggs. If you're missing the queen and you don't have any brood left, then the workers will start laying. Workers can only lay drone eggs, so it's kind of their last ditch effort to get their genetics out into the wild. And usually inside of a cell, when you start having laying workers, you'll have like eggs just everywhere. There'll be like 6 of them per cell. You can see in this picture right here is laying workers. They'll put them all over the place. They won't be dead in the middle, standing upright like a normal queen egg will be. So they pass through 3 stages. This is all the timeline for each stage: egg, larval, and the pupal stage. So for your basic worker, it's 3 days as an egg, 6 days as a larva, 12 days as a pupa, and then they emerge on the 21st day. So here's some pictures of some eggs, the larva, and then these are pupas. Being able to read the brood pattern is really important to being able to be a good beekeeper. Like looking for little things like how much royal jelly is in the larva cells. So, if they look dry, they're probably not well fed. You need to feed them so that you'll have healthy bees. And then you can look at a brood pattern right here like this and see it has a bunch of spots in it. This isn't actually too bad, but when you start having lots and lots of these empty spots, unless they're kind of like clustered in the middle, that's probably a sign that you have a queen problem or maybe a disease problem. And then the other thing, the one thing I did want to cover in a little more detail with the actual colony is the races of bees. So we've all heard this. The first thing about the races of bees in the United States is they've been here since 1621. They shipped bees from 1621, and then they stopped in 1922. So there's been the only person that's brought any new genetic material into the United States since 1922 is Sue Kobe. She brought in some drones semen from I think the UK or somewhere in Europe. Um, so and there's very few isolated populations in the United States. There's just a few. Like Sue Kobe actually has an island off the state of Washington where she can maintain uh, uh, the genetics because there's no way she's far enough off the mainland that bees can't get to it. But everywhere else in the U.S., all these bees have mixed. So that's something to keep in mind when you're shopping for bees and queens. Is that they may call it a buckfast bee, but there's probably some other genetics involved with that bee that you're buying. Um, so the main races that you'll hear about are the German bees, the European dark bees, or the Western European honeybee. Um, Usually everybody has them in their hives around here. You'll see them. They're the really dark colored bees. That means they have a lot of German genetics. The scientific name for those is Apis mellifera mellifera. The next one is Italian bees, which is probably what most of us are keeping around here. They're super popular in the South because southern Italy is pretty hot itself. So that's Apis mellifera linguista. Some of the key things for German bees, they're not very good producers of honey. They build up slowly in the spring, which can be, depending on your management style, can be useful. They're a little bit defensive. They have a moderate tendency to swarm, but they are vulnerable to American and European foul brood. Italian bees, they're not very good at clustering in cold. It's like, if we have during the winter apocalypse, was that 2 or 3 years ago when we didn't have, nobody had power for 4 days? It's possible they have to eat a lot. So I had a lot of bees starve that year but some of it was just my poor beekeeping. But because they don't cluster well, they have to eat more food. So if you're going to keep Italians, you need to make sure they have plenty of food in the wintertime, or that you're feeding them or taking care of them. They have a very quick spring buildup. They're prolific producers of brood. A lot of times when you really don't want them to. They don't make very much propolis. They're pretty hygienic and they're very productive for honey. They do tend to rob during dearths, so they'll rob their colonies nearby out if they can. The next one is Carnolians. Those are making actual comeback now. They used to hardly ever see anybody that kept them. One of the reasons people are starting to keep them is because they are good producers of propolis. This one says low, but that's not right. So a lot of people are keeping those because they make more propolis than Italians, and propolis is supposed to be healthy for the hive. But they do have a high swarming tendency. Like Bob Benny started adding those back into his commercial operation. And then there's our favorite race of bee, Africanized bees. That's Apis mellifera scaletta. They're awesome for their resistance to Varroa destructor and Nosema. They're very small colonies. They don't make much honey. They swarm like crazy. They don't. They actually they're so poorly adapted to cold areas they can't go north of, like, I can't remember, it was like Kansas or something. They just can't live past that. They're super aggressive. We probably have a lot of bees around the Houston area that have Africanized genetics with them, but all the testing that the bee lab has done, they haven't found very many that are truly Africanized bees anymore. We keep so much commercial bees around Houston that whenever the Africanized bees genetics get uh, diluted too much. They did do a genomic study for the bee weaver bees in Navasota, and they do have some Africanized genes in them. That's probably why they're so resistant to Varroa. Those are the main races of bees. The next ones are all hybrids. Buckfast bees, I don't know if you haven't heard of those. Those were developed by a monk in Buckfast Abbey in Southwest England. He bred them specifically to be resistant to tracheal mites. They're actually really good bees. They do well around here, actually. Bee Weaver and R Weaver's original operation was founded on buckfast bees. Another one is Cordovans. So you can pretty much actually make any bee if you breed them enough. You can make any bee into a Cordovan. They're very gold colored. Most of these are Italians that you're going to see around here. They're docile, have good comb production. They don't overwinter well, and they have a high robbing behavior. Russians, they have a natural tolerance to varroa and tracheal mites. They're dark brown. A lot of people say they're very aggressive. I've never actually kept Russians, but I've talked to quite a few people that have, and I don't know anyone that's kept Russians for a long period of time. Some people try to get them and then breed them with other things to try to breed out the aggressiveness and keep some of the varroa resistance. Another one was a Purdue ankle biters. That was a program by Purdue University trying to get bees that have a high grooming behavior, where they chew the varroa mites off of the other bees. They're somewhat aggressive. I know a few people that actually keep these. They say they're pretty decent bees. Pole line bees. That's the USDA program. When did they start that? It's probably been close to 20 years now. So that was the largest VSH program that's ever been done. That's what I keep, or pole lines. They're on the 2.2 version because they keep trying to breed more VSH into these bees. Other than that, they're very similar to Italians as far as the way they build up. They're a little bit slower in the spring than Italians. They're super gentle. I've had really good luck with their mite resistance, even when I test them. You can buy them from a lot of people now. I think they're good bees. And then the other one around here that's applicable to Houston area is the bee weaver bees. They really have not treated since 2000. They might run around 5,000 hives though. So being that they're all resistant bees, that helps them keep from having to treat them. If you do keep bee weavers here, I would still recommend you test them and then treat as needed. They have excellent mite resistance. I kept bee weavers for 5 or 6 years. I was pretty happy with them. I did get a few that were aggressive. I had really good luck with bee weaver. A couple of them that I had that were just crazy aggressive, I called bee weaver. They sent me a new queen with no charge. I also had a mentee that had bought an Italian queen from them. He bought a package, and then he accidentally killed his queen when they put it in, and they supplied him a new queen for free. So bee weaver has excellent customer service. And their bees are very mite resistant. And then I have this list of I can post this in the thing, since I know a lot of people are buying bees right now. If I can figure out how to do it while I'm presenting. Well, I'll do it here in a minute. When we start the next speaker, I'll post it in the chat. These are the bee suppliers I know around here. We don't endorse any particular bee supplier or anything. But if you have questions on any specific supplier, I can tell you if I've had an experience with them or maybe someone else has. I think that's about it for today's presentation. Did y'all have any questions? Oh, here's the chat. I see somebody wrote in the chat about this document. Oops. Sorry.
It says, will this file be shared?
Yeah, I can probably add it to the Facebook page as a file. I'll have to see. I haven't tried that yet. If not, I'll bring it to the next meeting. I'll bring some paper copies of it.
Okay.
And if anybody needs it, here, I'll put my email address in here too. Just send me an email and I'll send it to you.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Mike. That's informative. Appreciate that. All right. So we're going to move to our next part of the meeting, which will be Dan Sebastian, who happens to be one of our Bee Club members. And Dan is going to be presenting to us on how to trap bees, how to catch a swarm Kind of, he's going to talk about the box you use to do it with, chemicals that might attract them or scents or whatever, and maybe a little somewhat about location. So I'm going to switch the camera over to Dan. Dan's microphone looks like it's on. So I'm switching this camera to that camera. Let's see if that, and there's Dan here.
All right. Well, Mike talked about buying bees and from various suppliers. Well, when you get into swarm trapping, they're free. You don't have to pay for them. Well, you have to pay some price for some of the equipment maybe you use. But I got into this swarm trapping about 2 years ago. And, then last year I got carried away. I trapped 14 swarms last year, which is, I had some amazing luck. Normally they say you can get about 50% of your swarm traps filled, but I had some unusual, excellent luck. And really, in swarm trapping, it gets down to, you got to have a box, that's suitable for catching a swarm. And then you need to load the box, meaning there's certain materials you need to put in the box. And then you need to take them out of the box and put them into your hive. Any questions? Or do y'all want some details on this? Maybe we better get into some of the details. The box tends to be what a lot of people prefer. And Dr. Shealy says an ideal box is 40 liters. So if you took a 10-frame Langstrom, you get about 40 liters of volume. Or I build a 5-frame box with about 6 inches of free space under the bottom. You can see here. And this is a free space underneath the box for getting that volume of about 40 liters. Now, building the box, you can build it out of any material. A lot of people build plywood. You don't want to use new materials unless you burn them. There's new materials, the bees don't like the chemicals that they smell in new lumber. So, in fact, the old, if it's been bees in a box before or on the frame, is perfect to put in your box. And I suggest at least one old drawn comb. This is a good drawn comb, older than dirt. As you can see, it's black. The wax moths even salvaged it, which doesn't hurt. And it smells like bees. That's the key. And your box, the older the box is and the more bees it caught, the better it is as a trap because it smells like bees. It's kind of like when bees get in a house, and if you don't seal off where they've been, they're coming back next year. So what do you, in loading the box, I put the drawn comb in the center of the box of the 5-frame. And then on the sides, I put maybe some other drawn comb out of an old trap. And then, I'm not saying this is the ideal, but I've read, and some people claim that if you use one blank frame or maybe 2, it gives more volume and the bees prefer it. I use a kind of a strip so the bees could build off that strip. Whether this is proven to work or not, it worked for me. And I also use then I put ice cream sticks in the top bar of a Langstrom frame too. And then, but the key is after you do that, wax it, put a lot of good beeswax on it. So everything smells like bees. Then you can see, I hope you can see the details. I put a board on the back that you can hang it on a tree and a hole up top. You need a good top. Now, then once you get your box all loaded with the materials, I use a pheromone called bee rain. Some people use lemongrass. Now, don't overuse this. I mean, you can overdo it. Put a couple of squirts on the top frames and maybe a squirt or so at the entrance. No more. Now, for longer lasting, one of the little tricks I do is I take a little medicine bottle, drill a hole in the top, put some cotton balls soaked with the bee wrangler, and drop them in the box. It'll gas off real slow, and you don't have to recharge it every few days. It gives you a little longer lasting. Now, you need to check now when do you hang a swarm trap? I've seen data that swarms can happen in December. I've had a swarm move in, but that's rare. Normally it would be like about May through June is when your bees are really maximum swarm. And that's probably the most ideal time when you'll catch the swarms, is during when the bees themselves are exploding. And you got, in fact, in Missouri County, when the Chinese tallow blooming, that's when they start really swarming. Then the other big thing is, where do you hang your swarm traps? Okay, a lot of people say 10 to 15 feet. I ain't climbing no ladder to go 10 feet. I'm too old for that. So my idea, and I've had good luck, is put 3 deck screws in a tree at the height you could hang the swarm trap standing on the ground. And I've had very good luck. So the business of 10 to 15 feet, I don't think there's enough data that it's worth the risk. Now, obviously, it gets them further up in the air, maybe the bees, but considering how much luck I had with hanging them at head height. Now, where do you put your swarm traps? I'm showing you, this is a fence line and this is a ditch that out in the country there and you see that little tree right there with the X? I caught 4 swarms on that tree last year. It was a hot tree. And the key is you have paths like the ditch. Bees tend to follow along ditches or tree lines and fence rows where the fences are. So where this crossed, this is north and that was east. So that first tree there on the cross is where I caught. Then I went further down here and had 3 more swarm traps, which I caught bees in. But they wasn't as prolific as the first tree right here on the cross.
Dan, is that a wet ditch or a dry ditch?
That's a wet ditch. The bees looking for water. It runs year round wet. And that was, like I say, that one tree there, I caught 4 swarms last season.
And is that fence like a privacy fence or a barbed wire fence?
Barbed wire fence. All right. So we got the locate. Oh, that's on the ditches. Now, the other location that I found is like you got woods along the creek, hang them on the tree on the outside of the woods, preferably on the south side. Now, the other thing they always recommend, your holes, aim them south or southeast. They seem to be the preferred direction. So if you put your swarm trap on a tree on the south side, it's outside, pointing outward. Now, to hang a tree, I use these deck screws, 3-inch. And you know, if you get in that swarming, get you a good driver and use deck screws. I put 3 in a tree for security. And then for safety, you strap the tree, the box to the tree, because you get some strong winds and it rocks it, and I've had them blow down. And then once you catch a swarm, this strap makes ideal to close the box up and clamp it down to move. So, what did I forget about?
How many frames go into your box?
Oh, I put a total of 5. This is standard 5 frames each. And put the drawn cone one in the center. And now you could have 2 drawn cone ones and stick them in if you got them. Now, I do a little bit of top bar hive and lamp strip. So if I'm swarm trapping for a top bar hive, I take the top bar and then I take the of a Langstrom frame and just lay it on top of a top bar hive that's drawn comb, take 2 screws, drop it in my box, and then I have set up for putting them in a top bar hive. And being I have about 3 top bar hives, and I had a top bar hive that got robbed out, so I had a lot of good drawn comb, so I was using them for loading my swarm traps. Let me kind of check the, oh, the other thing. You need to check your swarm traps on a regular basis. And last year I hung 2 swarm traps on a fence line, and I went back in 3 days and bees coming in and out. I said, man, this is a hot place. And then I came back about 4 days later and both swarm traps were empty. Okay, what happens is when you put a reloaded hive in there with pheromones and maybe a little honey and comb on it, they're robbing it. Now, so after that, what you need to do is when you think you got a swarm, meaning bees coming in and out, pop the lid up and look. If there's bees on the top frame, you got a swarm. If there's no bees on the top frame, they're just robbing. Because I got fooled twice last year, thinking that, oh, I got a swarm in there, because they were coming and going, but they were just robbing out the residual honey and wax and what have you. I make, oh, you could buy these prefab closures, but I make my little to close off the hole, and with a little screen, you screw it on there, and you flip it open, and so then you come there, flip it shut. Now, I learned a real lesson the first time I went try to check on a swarm trap at night, and the thing wasn't closed off. Bees are damn mean. When you come to disturb them at night, they're coming after you. So when you go to retrieve your swarm trap or move it, make sure your door is closed or have a bee suit on, because at nighttime bees come out and they come out after you. So just keep that in mind. The other important thing, when you catch a swarm, I would suggest don't disturb that box for the first week. Let them get settled in. Don't be going opening up and looking at it. If you got to pop it open just to check bees, that's one thing. But don't do anything more. Leave them alone for the first week, because if you disturb them, they may take off. But don't leave them in there more than 3 weeks, because let me tell you what happens. If you leave them in too long, you come back and they build out on the bottom, and then you can't transfer this frame into your Langstrom deep. So
you can't. It's a mess. I've done it.
It's a mess. So remember, when you catch a swarm, now if you get a real weak swarm, well, you could probably leave them in a box forever, but most swarms are stronger than that. I've actually caught a swarm in a double-decker swarm trap. I had a deep and a honey super on top, 5 frame, and in 3 weeks, they filled the honey super with honey, because it was a big swarm and it was in the peak honey flow of talus. And literally in 3 weeks from the time they moved in, they filled the top honey super with honey, capped honey. What did I not catch or tell you about? You got your tools of the trade, deck screws, your clamps, your box, and remember, the older the box and the more bees have been in it, the better it is.
So I have a couple of questions, Dan. That box is 5 frames deep and as wide as a normal
Langstrom, right?
Langstrom high. But how do you know how deep to make it? What's your volume inside that box that you're doing?
My volume is, it's a size that gives about 40 liters. So it basically adds about 6 inches underneath.
So 40 liters, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know what the exact dimensions, I'd have to look at. You get on the internet and it tells you building swarm traps. I think it's 19 some inches deep. I mean, we could measure it, but
yeah.
But the target is that now you don't have to build a 5 deep. I have a top bar hive, and one day I set it on a sawhorse across the street because there was a swarm in a tree hoping to go to it. Well, the swarm flew off, but another small swarm moved into that box, just sitting on the yard across the street from, I live here in Bel Air. And it just so happened to be when swarms were really active and they moved into the top bar hive that I just set in the neighbor's yard over here, and they moved into it, a real small swarm. Now, what size swarms you catch? Some of them are small. There was one swarm that I went and checked on my swarm trap. There was so many bees, they didn't move in the trap. They just were sitting on the box, and it was too many bees, and they didn't even bother to go into the swarm trap. It was like the size of a basketball. And so then I went home to try to get a box to get them in. Well, you got the time limit, and they took off. It was, you know, they had already found another location they were going to, and they left. The other thing is, once the swarm season's over with, don't just leave your swarm traps out there with drawn comb, because the wax moths will really screw them up. This is exactly what happens. You can see where and get a little closer up here, what wax moths will do if you leave your
you kind of see
drawn comb out too long. So what you could do is if you want to leave the box out there, pull the drawn comb frame out, throw it in the freezer for 2 days, and replace it with another one, and that way you freeze any wax moth eggs. Is that all? Any questions or things that you would suggest that I can answer?
I'm looking for questions. I don't see any on the chat yet. So you put it out, if the swarm season is May through, say, the end of June.
May through June.
Do you put it out like mid-April or 1st of April, or do you go ahead and you leave it out through July?
If you really want to watch them and take care of them, you can set them out in March, because sometimes we'll get some swarms started, but really that's probably pushing it when you March. I would probably look at April. Really is.
Do your taxes and put your swarm traps out.
Yeah, that's good. But you know, here in Texas, you know, it's not all that predictable when they swarm, because we get some warm weather and they may swarm a little earlier. But the heavy season, and in Brazoria County, is when the Chinese tell, and that's April through, you know, it's through blooming by June. So time June hits. Now, you know, you'll get later swarms, like for example, maybe a tree gets blown over and they leave, or they get overcrowded, but you know, that's not the high level of swarms you're looking for.
Okay, so I have a question here. How long do you leave swarm and trap before moving into final hive location?
No more. Once the bees move in, you know, when you establish that they moved in a swarm, 3 weeks.
Okay.
Then you know, you could take it down and move it into a box earlier. And I do that sometimes. I take the swarm trap down, set a Langstrom hive on a cattle mineral bucket right under it, and then put the frames in the hive and leave them there for a couple of weeks, and then move them to the house.
Yeah.
But the 3 weeks is kind of, because if you leave them too long, they'll build on the bottoms and cross comb.
Yeah.
Then you got a lot of cutting and mess to move them from the trap into the box.
And by the time 3 weeks is in there, have they laid eggs by that time? Maybe
yes.
That brood.
I've had them produce enough honey in 3 weeks that they filled the super.
Yeah.
But it was a big swarm.
So that way they're a little more committed if you wait.
That's why you don't want to touch them for the first week, because once they start laying eggs, then they won't.
They're yours.
Abandon you.
Yeah. And let's see. Russell says as you mentioned, he just reiterated that old locations are really good for swarm traps. I see the Watsons have a hand up. Let me see what that means.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah, thanks, Dan, for the presentation. It was really good. We're just wondering, how far away do we have to put these traps away from other hives?
Okay, so the question is, how far away do we put, should you set your swarm trap from your other hives that you might have in your yard? Like if you
I
had,
would say 500 yards if
Five-
you can.
you get that, James?
The
Gotcha, yeah.
bees don't like to move into a swarm trap near existing hives because they figure it's overcrowded. I think the recommendation is something like 500 yards.
500
But you may
yards.
not
Okay.
have that room.
Yeah.
No.
Now, I have put swarm traps next to another single hive just 50 feet away.
Yeah.
But it was that hot area where, well, let me explain why I think that was such a hot area. A commercial beekeeper was tied up in California and his bees started swarming. That's why I caught 4 swarms in one box on one tree.
So you were fishing in a barrel.
I was fishing in the barrel.
Okay, so I have a question here. After you catch a swarm, do you locate the queen and isolate her to help you with keeping the nest in your hive body?
No.
No.
I never could find a queen anyway.
Okay.
I take all the frames out and generally I'll put it into a hive right at the base of the tree and then leave the box there, the swarm trap, and they'll move into it. And when the box is empty, I know they've all relocated into the new hive. And then leave them there for maybe a while, let them settle down, and then take it to the house.
Take it to where it really goes. Okay. Let's see. Oh, hold on a second. I think somebody's working on a message right now. Question. Joe, did you want to just sort of, okay, there we go. Okay. Joe, did you have another question? Joe Tadori? Started typing there. No. Okay, good. Okay. All right. Did you want to talk about your other thing there? Okay.
Okay. Here about 3 weeks ago, I watched a video on the new type of hives to build so the bees would line them with propolis. I think the bee supply is coming out with them in about, at that time they said in 2 weeks. They weren't even for sale yet. And basically what this PhD in Minnesota that studied bees says, you got to roughen the inside of the hive. Now, I've been doing some playing around with how to do that. And what I did, this is cedar. I took my blowtorch, burned the heck out of it, and then took a very stiff wire brush and brushed out the carbon. And I got a nice rough grain structure, which I figure will make an ideal hive. Now, the purpose of this is they claim that when the surface is rough, bees will line it with propolis, which makes it more healthier hive. And this is going to be the newest thing they say in beekeeping. It's just coming out from some of the research work. And this is my attempt to how to get the surface rough. And it seemed to work pretty good. And I'll let Joe feel it.
Okay.
He could feel it and comment on it.
Yep. Pretty rough.
And basically, I got a badass blowtorch that I burn it with, and then just take a very stiff wire brush and brush off the loose carbon, and you got a nice rough surface.
Okay. Russell, I have a question. What is NAHBE?
What is what?
Russell just put that, say marked queens and
North
Go
North
ahead.
American Honeybee Expo. It was the one that just had in Kentucky. I went to. It's pretty nice.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Oh yeah, it was that. That's where they were demonstrating this new
Oh, they were?
video.
Yeah, they had them
One up in
available.
Tennessee or
I think they're
Kentucky?
called propola hives.
Propola hive.
Propolis hive, yeah, that's what they call it.
Okay.
They gonna charge you about $5 premium, but you know I don't buy any hives anyway. I build my own from cedar. And I say build my own. I have a guy with a 1,500 square
Really
foot.
see your stomach.
I have a neighbor over here that's got a 1,500 square foot woodworking shop that loves projects. So I called him up, bring the lumber over, and we knock out a few hives.
There you go.
I'm lucky to have a friend like that. He's a master. He won't let me build a sloppy hive, you know, just whack it together. It's got to be perfect or it don't go
Gotta
out.
be good. Yeah. All right. So let's see, do we have any other questions about swarm traps? Dan, how many, so you said at our next meeting, February, you're gonna have one of these swarm traps
I'm gonna donate this seasoned swarm trap as a door prize.
as a door prize. So that'll be for a February meeting. So everyone wants to be sure to come to that.
It's well seasoned.
And you're
It
gonna
caught
have,
a few
are you
swarms.
gonna have the frames in it?
Frames in it and everything, and one of these loaded with bee wrangler. All you gotta do is put some screws in a tree and hang it.
All right, perfect. That'll be a great prize. That'll be a great prize. Okay. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna turn off that camera, go to the other camera. Camera, go to camera front. Is this it? There it is. Okay, y'all can see me now? I hope. I think, can you hear me? Yes, okay. So that pretty much concludes our meeting for today. It's a little shorter than usual, but that's because we didn't have to actually set up the room or take the room apart. And I know people are more likely to be asking questions when they're in person. So if anybody's got questions, Dan, of course, can you post the link to Denton AgriLife? Peter, what, Denton,
Yeah.
Texas?
Mike had that up at the beginning. So with the book, there was a PDF file.
Oh, yeah. That PDF file, yeah, yeah. I think Mike's gonna post that. Yeah, he's got it, dentonagriLife.com.org. It's if you go in the chat and scroll to the top of the chats. one of the
I
first-
started late, so it
Oh, it
wasn't
doesn't show
there
up?
yet.
Okay. Here you go. He just reposted it. Now you should be able to
Okay.
see it, Peter. Okay, mentor mentee program. I've got a question on that. So James, who's on the line, he's under here is the 114 Watsons. He is our mentor coordinator now. And so he's got the list and we are working on getting everybody matched up. And of course, we were gonna do that in person today at the meeting, but that's gonna have to wait till the February meeting. But that should still be okay. If you're wanting to start keeping bees, you need to basically you need to order your bees like now, so you get them sometime in first part. It's gonna be first part of May now. If you order them now, you're getting probably first part of May. If you order them last November, you might be getting them in April, but likely now if you order them, you get them in May, which is still okay. That's still okay because year one of keeping your bees, you're not gonna really be looking for a honey harvest. You're just looking to learn how to keep bees and try to keep them alive till the next year when they make some honey for you. That's the big key. So you don't want to be starting over with new bees every single year. That's not a beekeeper. That's really just that's a customer. That's a bee customer. So that's where you want to be. And then here's Mike making a shameless plug for himself on the chat that he had nukes for sale for late April, early May. So you can still get those. So I think we still have online, Kyle, is that correct? Our sign up available, and Christy, that for mentor program, that's still up there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure I can remember. So yeah, that's it. Our next meeting, course, third Tuesday in February. I haven't actually looked at my calendar to see what date that is, but be 7 o'clock, and hopefully there won't be another, snowpocalypse like we had today. But thank you all for joining. And if there's no more questions, I guess we can just adjourn. Is everybody good? All right, thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Very good.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
y'all take care. Stay warm.
You too.